Welcome, everyone. My name is Sean Domi. Thank you for joining us today. We have Dr. Michael Pilon here as our guest. So we're going to chat a couple minutes about his background so we all get on the same page. But like I said, this webinar is for everyone. So, please ask your questions in the Q&A and we'll get to them during the webinar. So, Mr. Mike, please tell us a little more about yourself, please.
Well, as I mentioned, I just retired from dentistry in November, a wonderful career. I was in the Canadian Army for 25 of my years, and I discovered as a student I could go to Europe for $2 a shot. And when I was a young, misspent young youth fellow, you could hitchhike. So I hitchhiked around most of Europe. I spent 8 months in Cyprus with the United Nations Peacekeeping Force, and I visited Lebanon a few times, Israel. I also spent half a day in Damascus. I went down to Kenya. So I'm an old hippie, really. Hitchhiked 45,000 kilometers and visited 40 countries. And that can be related to voiceover because I acquired an interest in accents. And I've received a number of auditions, positive auditions with accents. So that was rather interesting. So you never know what your background is going to be. It's not just sitting in front of a microphone. It's your backgrounds, maybe your training, your professional training or hobbies. All of these things come out. So I'm here as a newbie to share some of my experiences. I guess that rounds it out.
Amazing. So how did you get started on voices.com?
Well, I was taking an acting course just for the fun of it. I'm not an actor. I hadn't been in an acting role since high school. And on the way into the studio, I was walking across a parking lot. A fellow said, "You've got a nice voice. Have you ever done voiceover work?" And I looked at him. I said, "What is voiceover work?" I had no idea. I thought it was a type of acting. And he had a studio, so I did 2 roles with him and got paid a little bit. And then Evan Weeb from voices.com contacted me, and I got quite interested and looked into it, started to set up a studio. And you're doing it on your own, it's a touch and go, but the internet, anything you want to learn is on there. I learned how to use Audacity, which is the free editing program. I took a course with Tommy Griffiths in Washington, D.C. on Skype, and that was quite handy. And the big thing he told me, I'd sent him a sample of an audition, and he said, "Your microphone isn't very good. What is it?" It was a little portable microphone. You'd record. I'd come to the other room in the computer and download it. So I now have an AT2020, which apparently sounds very good, and I have a preamp, a Tube MP preamp, and there's about 30, 40 feet of coax, but coax is pretty good material, within the house. And then from then on, it was a question of learning techniques. I also took a couple of courses live, which weren't too good. I won't mention them, but I took 3 courses with someone named Shelley Shenoy. She's a New York acting coach, I believe, NYC acting coach, something like that. Shelley Shenoy, Shenoy. You can check it out. You can do it online. She'd send you a little, an email with an audition with all the the mood and the mode and so on. You'd send her an MP3 and she would critique it. And then you'd try and correct that. And she'd say, "Okay, you've got that right, Mike, but this is something you've got to look for in your presentations." And it was a wonderful learning experience. I took 3 courses with her and it made quite a difference. And then I've discovered a fellow named Don LaFontaine, who is he's passed away now. He was kind of the voice of movies. And I learned a few techniques from him. So it's a wonderful learning experience. And I'm sure everybody, all the participants on here have gone through this. You can take formal courses too, I'm sure. But anyways, that's my background.
Amazing. So you were talking a little bit about your equipment, the 2020 that you have, the microphone and the preamp. So other than that, what's your studio look like right now?
The studio is separate from my computer. It's a spare room we had in the house. And what I did was I had those blue plastic bins with some foam, and Tommy Griffith said, "No, it sounds very tinny."
Mm-hmm.
I suggested I either put foam, or we got a number of these down-filled blankets we had around the house just kind of lying there. So I've put them around 3/4 of it and also behind in some shelves. It's not the most technical looking studio. If you wandered in, you'd think you're, in a very strange underground cave, but apparently the sound is good. I do get, I've never had complaints from anybody on that. So it's using blankets to shield the sound, the reflections, and so on. And on the net, there's so much. Do you stand a foot from the mic, 6 inches, 3 inches? And I've tested that, and I've also tested various levels of the preamp.
Mhm.
And I mentioned this yesterday. This is really amateur night. My son is an audio recording expert. He's taking courses in Toronto, and he's a musician. He's coming out with a new band called Black Tantra, which is a Far East philosophy group. He's very into Far East philosophies, but his band is the Black Tantra, very much like a Kurt Cobain evolutionary band. It's not copying Kurt Cobain, but he feels music hasn't evolved. But anyways, he said, it doesn't sound right. Are you speaking into the diaphragm? I
Mhm.
didn't know a mic had a diaphragm. I thought they were omnidirectional. And again, I'm here to teach, and teaching from my mistakes is a good point. So check your mic if the giggling is probably going international now as I hear this, but I recorded it with the mic with the diaphragm like this, and then the diaphragm like this, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden the sound sounded better. So that's kind of the background, self-taught from the web with YouTube, a lot of good examples on YouTube. And I bicycle. This is how I keep fit. I used to jog, but my knees are gone. And I skate in the winter. Some of you may be scratching your heads. What does that mean? There's a historic canal that goes through Ottawa that's about 5 miles long, 7.5 kilometers, maintained as a skating rink. And I'll be skating along or bicycling along, either reading signs as if I'm doing a voiceover or a dialogue. So very strange. You're talking to a strange person.
That's amazing. That's,
Different.
anywhere you can get that vocal exercises in. I had a teacher once who, same thing, used to bike around, do his scales while he was biking. So anywhere we can get practice in, that's amazing. Um, to reiterate a little more about what Mike was talking about, the omnidirectional versus cardioid. So many mics are built in a certain polar pattern, they call it. So omnidirectional means it's picking up sounds all around the microphone, whereas cardioid, it's just picking up what's directly in front of the microphone. And some mics, they have switches. You can choose which one you want it to act like. But often in voiceover microphones, like large diaphragm condensers, they'll be just cardioid. So you'll have to speak in the right side, the bright side, they call it. And so yeah, always be careful with your mic. But no, that's a great tip. So, let's talk a little more about your profile. So how many demos do you currently have on your profile? And
I think I have 8 or 9.
8 or 9? Okay.
Happened in the last couple of months. I've learned a few things on YouTube and so on, so I've been changing them, and I
Mhm.
got rid of a few. And when you learn perhaps a little bit of a better technique, a little better presentation, you listen to your old demos and you go, oh my gosh, that's not good. So again, to me, it's a learning process. I've changed a few of those. I also do demos in French and voiceover in French. My accent is very regional. It's Ottawa Valley accent, so I don't get too many totally French ones. I don't even try with the Parisian ones anymore. But where I have gotten a couple of good jobs is where it's a bilingual voiceover. My English is probably better than most of the French people who are applying, and my French is fairly close to what they want. And I also do a lot of Mediterranean accents, because I mentioned in my travels, I picked up accents. It may not be 100% accurate. If I went into a Lebanese restaurant and did my Lebanese accent, they're probably wondering where I was from and what part of the Ottawa Valley. But I have received a few accents like that. A few auditions. Well, someone asked me Shenoy. I should spell it Shenoy. Shelley Shenoy, Shenoy. Wonderful teacher. I was in the military, as I said, and in my basic training, the dental corps had to do basic training. The medical guys didn't. And we had a sergeant that would drive you into the ground. And I kidded her. I said, you're like my sergeant. You pick the wrong spots and you make sure I correct them. And that, I said positively, was very good.
Great. That's great. It's important to have honest feedback from coaches, to make sure you're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're auditioning, I know Gina here asked, how do you find your audition calls? I know most of the auditions you do are probably through our platform at voices.com.
Yeah.
How many auditions do you think you do a day on average?
It all depends on what I'm doing with other things, but I do about, say, an average of 5 or 6 a day. And what I did yesterday, again, when you're out to teach, sometimes you learn. I got a very good tip from Dave yesterday. He said, you don't have to read the whole audition. And because you audition it, you read it all, and you have to edit it, get rid of the scratches and the pops and so on. He said, no, most of your clients will probably only read the first 5 or 10 seconds. So I made some this morning, did a couple this morning, cutting down on the time. And then if they come back and say, yes, we like your voice, then you get the whole script. So that saved me a lot of time, a little hint for me there. But I do about 4 or 5 a day. I'll look at them, see if this may sound trivial, but if it's something that interests me, then I can get into it more passionately. Mm-hmm. But voices.com do send you auditions, I think, that are compatible with your background. There's quite amazing. And sometimes you look and you see that there's, 10 people or 15. I got a job about 2 weeks ago for a museum in New York City. I was quite happy with the way it went, and I was accepted and paid and the whole thing. And the fellow wrote me 2 weeks later. He said, unfortunately, they wanted a woman's voice. But I said, okay, I've spent the money, but I'll send it back, kind of joke. He said, oh, no, that's yours. Mm-hmm. But I was quite pleased with that. But there were 97 people involved in that audition. That's quite a few. But it all depends if they have 1 or 2 that, they'll sit up. It's like selling, as I said yesterday, my analogy is you're selling yellow shirts. And you've given them a beautiful yellow shirt, but they're looking for a red shirt. So it's kind of hard to predict. So do the best you can, the best you learn, and go from there.
Totally. Great advice. Amazing advice. So we can answer some of these questions that we've received here. So one from Gina is, how varied are your demo reels? And do you demonstrate accents in the demos themselves?
Yes, I have my main demo reel, which is this type of voice. Welcome to Ottawa, the city we call Disneyland on the Rideau River, something like that. I have a French one. I have one that's a bit wild. My daughter's involved in one of these online talent shows, so that she and a fellow in England. So I did one for them. It's just a little bit of a fantasy thing. I do have the accents, the Mediterranean accents, and a narration one. I made a website on my travels. I traveled a lot when I was younger. It was called, I'll put this out, it's 40countries.com, 40countries.com. Very non-commercial. It's not a commercial site, just you want to see about traveling when you're young. And my narration is the opening paragraph of that. And I redid it last night because I listened and I thought, no, a couple of things I've picked up in the last few months, I think I can improve on it. So there's a narration, there's a French one, there's a couple of ads. One is for travel for elderly people type of thing. It's had a couple of listens. So that's the sort of thing, a variety of things. Combination of, I would suggest to you, newbies, is what you're interested in and what you feel you're good at. In other words, if you're interested in travel, maybe do a narration on traveling and whatever that happens to include. And then also the more serious ones like the narration, because voiceover on books is very popular now, audiobooks. So that's a variety of things.
Awesome.
And French one too. I did a French Canadian one.
Let's hear your let's hear your French Canadian demo. Could you perform it for us?
I don't remember the words.
Okay, no problem.
I can make something up. Bonjour tout le monde et soyez bienvenus à cette session sur voices.com sur les possibilités d'avoir une voix mondiale, non seulement dans votre maison, mais autour du monde.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. So Gina is also, she has I think a little bit, a question that builds upon that a little bit. So do you vary the subject matter? Say one reel that would be comparable to a radio commercial, one reel that would be an animated character, etc.
Yeah. No, none. There's no liaison between the 8 or 9 that I've got up there. I do vary them, and the key one is your demo. And I changed that yesterday. I wasn't too happy with the way it sounded and the subject matter, so I changed it a little bit. And you can edit on Audacity quite nicely. And I think you have to realize that most people aren't going to spend a lot of time listening. So I cut one down from about 30 seconds to 15 to 20 seconds. They just want to they don't want to hear the story of your life. They don't want to know where your name is and where you live, sort of thing. There's a radio one I'm not too happy with. I change them every now and then, depending on, what I've picked up along the way and what I've learned from listening to excuse me, I got the hiccups, listening to the radio and listening to things on the web. It's a different world now, isn't it? We can talk around the world and learn.
100%.
I did a few British ones, but they didn't go over too well. I was trying to sound like Prince Charles, where he pauses 7 times in a 6-word sentence, but I didn't get any jobs that way.
The RP accent, yeah.
The RP accent, yes.
If anybody does need scripts for your demos, you can email me at my email here. It's sean.domi@voices.com, and I can send you some scripts if you need.
I believe you have some music on there too, don't you?
Yeah, we can send you music tracks. They're called bed tracks that you can lay underneath. You can use dry reads for your demos. That's not a problem either. But if you have the producing that you want to jazz it up, yeah, we have a bunch of free royalty-free bed tracks. Yeah,
I got rid of some of those, but I had one for radio station, a jazz station from the West Coast. And,
nice.
Different.
Yeah.
I say the West Coast because that could be the West Coast of Canada or the United States or West Coast of Ireland if you're sort of listening to the music.
So we'll get to some of these questions. JD's asking, do you have a phone patch? What do you use if the client wants to direct the VO? And by the way, you have a great voice, Michael. Thank you for doing this webinar.
I don't have a phone patch. I may get one if the need arises. I've used things on Skype. I've used Skype as a direction, and I'm not that familiar with what is requested on a live feed, so that's something I'd get into, or just use the phone. And as I said, my recording studio is remote from the computer, so could mean a bit of running around or just some over phone things. And it's interesting, the feedback when you do a feed and someone will come back and they'll say, I like your first 2 sentences. Could you change the third to be the same pace or a faster tempo or a bit more serious? So there's a lot of very good back and forth, I find, with the people that, who have accepted my auditions. And I find that kind of nice. You realize you're talking to someone halfway around the world. I've done, as I said, voiceovers in Lebanon and Israel. And yes, in Norway, I have a deep voice I should be very proud of, a deep narrative voice, kind of a scary monster. And I got a request from a girl in Norway who's doing a virtual reality piece. And I played Odin, the Nordic god of war or something like that, or a Nordic warrior. But I found out his name is pronounced Udin. And there was Princess Hal, who's pronounced Princess Hel, and Froya is Froya. So I sent her an MP3. I said, I guess Princess Froya can tell Udin to go to hell. The Nordic joke there. But, this is quite an international group, as you can understand. You're talking to people from around the world, which is very, very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm suggesting one friend of mine who's from Argentina originally, his mother was British and he went to a private British school. He has the RP accent, and he's just retired as well as a dentist, and he also speaks fluent Spanish. And I said, Chris, it might be something you might want to do, because he is into public speaking and so on. So it is an exciting world.
Totally. I mean, that's, that goes into Mariette's question here a little bit about, if we're an American company and our European accents necessary. Well, we have jobs from all over the world, just like Mike was saying. And, actually we're a Canadian company, but a lot of our jobs come from the US. And, but, we're worldwide. You can find jobs like, in countries all around the world, in over 130 languages, accents. So, I mean, the opportunities are worldwide, but you can do it from your own home.
Yes, that's quite amazing, isn't it? When you consider that, you know, you can get on there. And this one for Norway was quite exciting. And there were some revisions, of course, because I was mispronouncing the name. And then they know exactly what they want. I'll put something that's very scary, but they say a little less scary, more, you know, authoritative or something like this. And it was back and forth with MP3s. And she put the link to her virtual reality piece, and she's won several gold medals in Europe and in China. So she said that there may be some other work coming from there. And I did an interesting one. It was on the Turkish-Armenian border, and of course they had some rather sad history going back 100 years ago. And I played the part of a young Armenian whose best friend was a Turk. And they were in this whole little thing, and I submitted it. And about 2-3 minutes later, I got a note that said, "Oh, gee, you submitted it just too late. We just closed it. I like your voice, but we've given it to someone, but I'll keep you in mind." So that happens too sometimes. I've had a few jobs, repeat jobs, from people who were looking for a certain type of voice for their category, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
For
real
sure.
variety out there too.
Variety of jobs there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So why don't you talk about, a little more about what kind of varieties you've been seeing? You know, you know, do you think your voice is suited towards one particular category more than another? Or what do you think about that?
Well, the categories change. I've had a couple of medical ones that I've had likes. I didn't necessarily get the job, but that with the background, at least I could pronounce, you know, some of the medical terms, which was
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And people like, depending on what country they come from, they may know the pronunciation of certain things from that part of the world. So that will go over better. And if you're doing an ad on, you know, a voiceover on, I did one once for a restaurant, and they wanted the French pronunciation of the restaurant. It's Taiwan. I pronounce it Taiwan. So I got an MP3 from him, and I realized I had a friend named Taillefer, and I missed that. So I sent back with Taiwan, with the French pronunciation, and les 110, the Taiwan. Because in Quebec, it'd be les 110, you know, there's a different accent. And accents are a lot of fun too. So I even in English, I don't go overboard. Although I've done a couple of Southern ones, and I've gotten likes on those. Down here in Louisiana, there is someone on from Louisiana. She can tell me if it's kind of the right one. But down here in Louisiana, we like Canadian beer.
That was Gina, right? Gina. How does that sound to you? Amazing. Well, so let's get back to some of these questions here. Paula's asking, so who produces your demos that you've used?
I do everything myself.
Do everything yourself? Okay.
Yeah.
Audacity.
Audacity is my editing program, yes.
Okay, perfect.
I do produce it myself. My wife is a trained classical musician, so she's got a very good ear. And, you know, we get to the point of almost arguing, and I sort of back off a bit, but she can say, "No, Mike, when you're entering that, you should be a little more emotional," you know, something like that. So yeah, I do get, but there are professional demo producers, and I've known some people who, you know, are using that with good success too. But I just do my own on my own.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, you know, through a platform like voices.com, a lot of it is self-directed, like the scripts. You choose the auditions that you want to record. You record them yourselves. You'll edit them yourselves. So it's very, very self-reliant. And you kind of become a little bit of a master of all trades, you know, with as far as a little bit of engineering, a little bit of producing. But, you know, these are skill sets that enhance your main role of acting, I think, you know, and you can get across the product you want to, you know, the audition that you want to give across to the client. But yeah. So yeah, we can get back to some of these more questions. So here's one from Drake. I'm not sure if this is Canada's Drake, where but so can you share how you determine read time?
You mean for each individual, how would I call it? Each individual audition, you mean?
Yeah,
Like
I think
fast
that's
or slow?
I think he means, yeah, where, um, determine read time. I think, yeah, for each audition, how long of the script do you read? Do you read the whole thing? Do you read a short
Yeah, no,
amount?
yesterday I found a piece of news. Again, I'm Mr. Newbie here. I'm here to learn as well. And David said, you don't have to do the whole script if it's a long script. People only listen to the first 5 or 10 seconds.
Hmm.
If they like your voice, I'll assume they'll listen 15. So I usually do about half a minute now, or I'm going to be doing about half a minute, unless they want the whole thing.
Hmm.
Then you get into the emotion of it. You read it through and you're sort of saying that this is very important. But depending on the script, you might say this is very important, if that's what the person means. You know, how you modulation, intonation, pauses between words. Sometimes I find that kind of exciting. You're doing a series of sentences. I might read one sentence at a time, pause 5 seconds or less, and then read the second sentence. And then I link them all up on the editing and make sure that they make a little bit of sense. Because you were in a conversation really with someone through an ad or a presentation. So it can take a little time to do it. But I submit my average audition, I'm going to keep it about 30 seconds now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we recommend about 15 to 20, 30-second max. That's always a good thing to aim for. You know, they just need to hear that. You know, once they listen to it, they know, right? The clients know who
Yes.
they want. They know if that's the right voice. So you don't want to waste too much of your time as well. You know, it's much quicker if you can just get the short, get the emotion across. But no, that's great advice. So we do have another question here from an anonymous attendee. And so what are your thoughts about creating a demo before you have the top-notch equipment to do one?
Well, I learned, again, it may sound a bit simplistic. I learned by rote. I bought what I thought was a very good microphone. There's a store in Ottawa. I think there's one in Toronto, maybe even in London, Long and McQuaid.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some very good equipment, and I'm not getting anything from this. I'm just mentioning it. It's a microphone with a digital recording instrument in it, and I take it to my computer and play it back. Well, I didn't have the ear for it, but Tommy Griffith said, no, it sounds a bit tinny, and he recommended the AT2020, and it wasn't that expensive. I think it was only about $230. You know, they're very expensive microphones out there. But and then I also acquired that preamp, which I thought was good because then you can play games with that. You know, I'd record something with the preamp. There's 2 or 3 controls. At this stage, I go and look at it, listen. No, I'll set it back a bit. Okay, that's, you know, it's touch and go. But as far as doing a demo with the right equipment, you have to work with what you have, I think, is the best way to do it. And I would recommend the AT2020, which wasn't super expensive, and the Tube MP preamp. And I've been quite happy with that, and nobody's ever complained. So,
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to find the right microphone for your voice. I think that's something that is very important. Each mic has its own frequency response that will, you know, enhance or do the opposite to your voice. So finding the right one's important. But the 2020 is a great voiceover microphone. Large diaphragm condenser mics. That's the style that we'll use for voiceovers. But yeah, they go from a couple hundred to couple thousand and more for that style of microphone. So, you know,
yeah, that's
try
just
some out.
me.
Yeah, it gets crazy. Like some Neumanns, get a Neumann microphone and you're paying for it.
Yeah. So Janet here, I've got the questions up on the board. You don't have to read the whole script. Most of them, and I think on the voices.com, it says read a portion of the client script. So if you're doing an audition, you're basically trying out, and you're saying, as you say, from 15 to 20 seconds, depending on what the script is. I sometimes go half a minute. It's far easier for you to do that, and you get an opportunity to probably do more scripts because you have to edit it. I find I have to do a lot of editing. I've got little clicks in the edges of the words. So do your very best the way you want that script to be, and then submit it about 20 to 30 seconds. That seems, I'm happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, how quick is your turnaround on a job from Janet? That all depends, Janet. I'll do the audition, send it in, and I'll check the voices.com page and it says they've listened to me, deciding, and then hiring, and some guy who knows where, or gal, no, probably a guy, got the job. But if I do it, and the other day I did one from New York City, I think I submitted it Monday. On Tuesday, she liked it, and I re-edited a few things, and I left out a few words by mistake, so I had to add the extra words. I find that hard, because you're going along with your voice like this, and suddenly the one word is a little higher. I have to tune my ear to the voice. So generally speaking, once you're accepted, it can be anywhere from 2 to 3 days, or I've even had 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what they're looking at, because we don't know what's going on at their end. They may have 100 different jobs they're looking at. How do you feel about that, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, no, definitely. You want to record just a short amount, but yeah. Sorry, I was looking at this next question here, so I apologize if I didn't get the end there. But yeah, maybe we can go on to the next question here. So with JD's, he's asking if 50 people have already auditioned when you get the script, would you still audition?
If I feel that I can do something good, I do. I've seen things that cover things that I like. Like I got that one for 97 other applicants, which kind of surprised me. And it's from New York City, so they probably had a pretty heavy deal, and I got it. So, but other times you're looking at it, think, boy, was that ever a good read? And there's 5 other people, and completed, someone else got it. So it's very, very difficult to say. It is a perception thing too, because they're perceiving, they're looking for a certain thing. And I have had some people come back and say, we weren't quite looking for your style of voice, but could you do it just a little bit slower and see what happens? Of course, you can do things in Audacity. I recorded a piece that went for 130 or a minute and 30 seconds, and they wanted a minute and 15 seconds. So what do? Do I re-record it going slower, or do I go onto Audacity and change tempo?
Oh, I wouldn't mess around with that too much. Yeah.
What's that?
Did you do that? Did you end up changing the tempo? You did, yeah?
It didn't change. You see, if you change tempo only, it doesn't change the key.
The pitch, yeah.
Pitch, I should say. And I did cut out a few things too. I made some of the pauses a little bit smaller, but no, she came back and said, I love it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I've done that a few times.
Amazing.
But yeah, there are little tricks like that. To have read the whole thing over again would have been very difficult, because there was a lot of intonations and a lot of, the voice sounds that make it good,
That's really interesting. Wow. So here's one with, talking about the microphone again, the AT2020 you use. Bert's also got one, but no preamp. So, you will with USB. I'll just quickly explain this. With a USB connection, usually the preamps are built into the microphone, so you can just turn up the gain from the microphone. If you have an XLR connection, which is with the 3 prongs that you'll see, that you'll require a preamp. So what it does is it converts that analog mic signal into a digital, turns it into a line level signal that digital equipment needs to hear. So essentially it just turns it up. It's a boost. It takes that small voltage and makes it larger. So you will need a preamp for microphones with an XLR connection. For USB, you don't. They're generally built into the microphone itself. So I hope that helped you, Bert. So why don't you tell us a little more about Reread? So when you get hired for a job, how often do you find the client coming back to you and asking you, can you redo this part? Can you do it faster? Does it happen a lot, or is it you do it once and that's the one that they want?
I hadn't, this may sound silly, I haven't really paid attention to that. I think most of them, because you're only doing part of a read, sometimes I find when I do the second paragraph, my tone is slightly different or something. So I just generally read the whole thing over as if I'm just starting afresh and get as close as I can. And every now and then someone will come in and say, well, you went from this word to this, or you mispronounced a certain word, or you were, the liaison between words was a little bit too quick, or you forgot a word because I type it all out and I go to my room. I actually use my iPhone. I'll type it out as a message and I read it on the iPhone because the iPhone's nice and small. It's not wrinkling like paper and it's very clear. And you get a little typo in there. And so I generally almost, when I get an acceptance, I look on it as something new, just as for the challenge of it to produce the best. And they'll come back quite often, be very happy with the tone or the intonation, or perhaps could you slow down like that one in French. I was mispronouncing some of the words in French. And that was a bit interesting for me. I had to forget I was from Montreal for that.
Amazing. So with what JD's asking here, so would you ever do different takes on an audition to show them a variation?
I have done that a couple of times. They've requested a slow read or a faster read or a North American read or one with a Central American accent. So I've done that. If it's just, if I look at the request of the client and they say, this is a certain age adult who's very enthusiastic about sports, we'd like or the macho guy or the outdoor guy or the professorial type. So I might just do 2 reads on that. I'll say, this sounds more professorial with a slight British accent. Or I can do it this way, sounding more like a Canadian who's a Montreal Canadiens hockey fan.
Go Habs.
Sometimes I do that and I'll send, now which style do you prefer? And that goes over well because then they feel that you're not just filling in time, you're working with them, which is a nice feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that.
Do you find, I've seen it a few times where in the audition notes, the directions, they'll ask you to do one, say, over the top and one more maybe laid back. Do you find that the clients ask often for you to do multiple reads in different styles? And yeah.
Once or twice, not too often. Generally speaking, that, and sometimes the page is very good. I find the audition page. We are looking for a mature adult, very studious, very scholarly, or they might want a kind of a rough edge guy. A guy's on the side of the road, but he's very intelligent and he's got that kind of, blue collar accent. Or there's the guy next door. I've never figured out what the guy next door is like. I had a few neighbors, but
give me back my lawnmower. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but that's been pretty good. And my 3 or 4 next door neighbors, they've all got different accents. They've come from different parts of the world, so I'm kind of confused, But no, they're very good. I find that the audition pages from voices.com are quite good. We're looking for a person between this age and this age. Well, if I'm going to do a younger voice, I make my voice just a bit higher. And I've gotten a few jobs for, a younger person, that sort of thing, because I can do the voice. They don't see me here, with my bad knees sort of things.
Yeah, no.
Someone asked about Tim Roller on compression. Yeah, there's a couple of good sites on YouTube. Let's see, I forgot the name of the fellow. Jim, was it? That they do tell you how to edit your videos, your audios, I should say. And there was one fellow that like normalization, equalization, compression, and normalization. And then I saw a couple of others. It was compression, and they give you the ratios, like the numbers of the decibels. Then I use a equalization, very low bass sounds, under 100 hertz, and it gets rid of the rumble in your voice. And I like that. The sound was better. And then you normalize. And I sent my son, who's the recording artist, 3. One was nothing done. It was just straight out of the mic with it edited, for noise and such. One with the normalize, equalize, compress, normalize, and then one with just the compression, equalize, and normalize. And he liked that one the best. Mm-hmm. So that's what I do. But look on YouTube, you'll see some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to over process your audio either. You might get some unnatural kind of sounds from that. Compression too, you want to be careful with because, I mean, if you don't know the attack and the release settings and output gain all proper, then you could do more harm than good to your audio. So
they
be
do
careful.
give those on. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but they do give them on this one. This one fellow gives advice on it, and this one fellow, William Williams, that's a name you can't forget. And he says, "Are you normalizing the first thing? Are you stupid?" Oh, maybe I am. So I checked his thing, but there are some very good things out there on the net. No matter what you want to learn about, like your use of Audacity and for editing it and for treating it for compression and equalization. And I like the deal for my voice, taking off the deep end of it. It does get rid of a bit of a rumble over 100 meters.
Yeah.
I have faked it a bit on some of the younger voices. I've made my audio a little bit higher. And I don't know, I can't recall if that was a success or not. But you can do a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah, with EQing, just EQing is great. If you can learn an EQ program, a plugin on your program, I'd recommend it. And just like Mike said, anything under 180 hertz around there is unnecessary for the speech frequency. So yeah, you can use a low cut filter or a high pass filter. Get everything over there. The speech frequencies are generally in like the 5 to 8, 5 to 10K range. So you want to, that's kind of where most of the content will be, but be careful because sibilance also lives in that area. So you might get, sibilance is a bad word in voiceover. You don't want to hear that.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's another trick you learn as you go. It doesn't, Someone said if you speak slightly to the side, you don't get as many S's. I learned a few tricks for removing the S's. One is I will amplify it by -3 after I finish. And that gets rid of the there is a fish disc or something like that. I've tried that, but I'm not too good at it.
The plugin, the de-esser. It's called de-esser, yeah.
I didn't get much success. Sometimes at the beginning of a sentence, if it suddenly clips on or something, I use a flow on or something like that. It starts the word a little softer.
I see.
Phase in and phase out. That's it. You phase in. You just use it just at the beginning of the word.
Oh, fade. Yeah, a fade in.
Fade out. And that's a good one. So if you're using the word like Toronto, I put that and it suddenly comes Toronto,
Right.
Sounds a little better, a little bit easier on the ear.
Yeah. Those plosives, they can be, that's why we use a pop filter. Gets rid of some of those plosives. And if you do cut out the empty silence in between it, you can fade it in and it'll kind of reduce that harshness of it.
Yeah.
What you were talking about, the mic, the off-axis coloration is what they call it. It's a great tip. Like I can show you here with this microphone. If you speak not directly into the microphone, but slightly angled off, it's still going to catch most of it'll catch everything you're speaking, but it won't get that pop. You won't get the plosives right into the microphone capsule or the diaphragm. And also it reduces some of that sibilance. So no, that's a great tip from Mike, off-axis coloration.
J.D. Hart has mentioned something of the DBX compressor. That sounds good. He gates out the noise. So that's a good one.
Gates are great. Gates will get rid of that noise floor. You can also use, if you don't have a compressor, like a DBX, you can use a noise reduction plugin, like in Audacity. You've probably used that before, right? To get rid of your noise floor.
Well, what I do in the house, because I'm in my home, I turn off the furnace because you still get that background hum. And once or twice I forgot to turn it back on. And that was almost a divorce court issue. Living in Canada where it can be -20 or 25 degrees here in Ottawa, that wasn't too popular. So you have to do, I now have a little light on in my studio that I turn on to remind me to turn the furnace back on. And we have dogs. They don't bark too much, but they've been pretty good for these interviews, actually. They're upstairs.
Nice.
Little things we have to worry about.
So Drake, to get back to that, Drizzy Drake, to get back to that question we were talking about before, about rates. So on our website, on our platform, Mike can probably tell you a little more about how we quote ourselves, but clients will put up a budget for how much they want to pay per project for the audition. So Mike, how do you determine your rates? How do you determine your quote for the budgets that they've allotted?
I just go, like, let's just say this job is being offered for between 250 and 500. And I've been told by a number of people, like, unless I was Don Fontaine or somebody like that, the late Don Fontaine, who's a hero of mine, I generally go down a bit. So between 250 and 500, I'll put in a quote for 400. I don't really worry much about the number of words, but what does this look like to the client? Now, if the client is very fussy and the best job comes in at 500, they might just go for them. But there's so many people out there, I feel that I go down a little bit. This is what I've been told, slightly above high, 60 to 70% of the maximum. And I've been happy with that. I choose the jobs I want to try for and go from there.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. 70, that's exactly where we find the most competitive area is. But yeah, you can, through our website, when you audition, you can quote yourself anywhere really. If you feel like, you want to quote way more than the project's budgeted for, you can. But the clients will provide you a budget range that they feel comfortable with paying the actor.
I got an offer. In fact, excuse me, it's in the final stages now. I had left out 2 words in the final audition. That was strange. It was my typo error. But she said, how much are you going to charge for revisions? And I said, no, we'll just include it in the whole thing, because I'm here to help you. So that went over well. And she seemed happy with the final result. So I do that. And again, I'm sure the rates go. Now, I've got a question. If a client or a voiceover artist starts getting a lot of work, do they get higher remunerated jobs? Is that done by you people, or is it just by the portfolio?
So if you get hired, do you mean like what will a client hire you again?
No, say, for instance, I've been working with you guys for a couple of years and suddenly I'm getting more auditions going through. Do I go higher up on your rating? Do I get higher value jobs? Because I've heard of some very expensive jobs out there.
All the premium members get the same opportunities. One thing that it might help out with is on your profile, you can have testimonials from your clients.
Yes.
The more clients you work with, the more testimonials you'll get from them.
Sure.
The better you'll be seen. If a client looks at your profile, you'll be seen as somebody that's great to work with. So that will help your case. And often, clients will come back to you repeatedly as well. So the more you work for and the more clients you work with, the more likely that they're going to come back to you in the future and work with you again.
Yeah. Janet asked, what do I charge per word? Janet, so far, I just basically go with the quote from voices.com. I don't go by the word. I've seen a couple of things, 2 or 3 sentences, and it's fairly high up there, and others that are fairly long, and there's a different rate. So I just go by what the clients are willing to pay. And if they're asking for between 200 and 400, I'll go 350 or something like that. So other people may do that differently if they get an individual request, perhaps. But that I haven't had the experience of having done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll see it. Each job will have a word count and it'll also have the budget. So you can kind of judge if it's worth your time to audition for, if you want to do the project or not. But I do notice that, with longer word counts, like audiobooks, for example, you will get paid more. But sometimes it kind of works in the voice talent's benefit, because I've seen projects for, say they want 3 words. It could be, a commercial where they just want a slogan said at the end, and they'll pay, much more than a project with, say, 100 words where they want $100, for example. So, it could work both ways, but that's on our website. It is the budget, not per word. It's per project, not per word count.
Yeah, Marriott asked, have I ever done an audiobook? Not yet. I've tried out for a few. I think that would be quite interesting. On my website or my demo page, I do have a narration of a book I wrote, the 40countries.com website, and it's the opening lines of that. And a few people have shown interest, and I haven't had too many auditions for audiobooks, but I'd like to get into that a little bit more too.
Yeah, audiobooks are fun. You can takes a little bit longer, but yeah, no, we have let's see if we can do a rapid round of questions quick in our last couple minutes. So do you master at JD's asking, do you master at 0 dB or 3 dB, -3 dB? So where do you normalize your files to before you send them off?
I've got it pre-put into my Audacity, so I'd have to, I don't remember. I just went on one of the websites. They said put it at normalization at such and such. So I couldn't tell you off the band. I could bring up Audacity if you wanted to, but I didn't determine it myself. I'm not that skilled. I sort of go by other people's skills. And so far the feedback, I sent it to my son who, has that training. He said, no, that sounds really good, whatever you're doing there. So sorry about that if I don't have the exact answer.
Yeah, between -3 and -1 dB is probably what you want to normalize to. That's probably adequate there. If there's any last questions, anybody has any last questions, put them in and then we can answer them quickly, but we're running out of time. So we'll kind of wrap this up. But yeah, thank you so much. Mike, do you have anything that you wanted to say to everyone? Anything to promote or?
No, this has been very good. I've learned a few things as well, which is nice. As I said, I don't have the answers to everything. I don't know what the normalization is I use. I did use what was recommended on a good website. And as I said, I compared what I'd been doing before to what I was doing now and sent them to my son, who looked at them or listened to them. He said, no, the third one is really good. He liked the audio. So I was lucky that way. I had a professional to help me out, as it were. And his band is the Black Tantra. They're going to be making the scene. Oh, there's someone calling. Sorry about that. It's my good news. My car's in at the garage.
Yeah.
My wife is supposed to be answering it.
That's okay. It's a nice wrap up to the end of the video. It's like, I got a call. I got to go. Bye, guys.
Oh, boy. Yeah, my car had the muffler went. I was driving around, so the muffler's just about a block from the garage, so I guess it's been a good day. Anyways, everybody, all my friends around the world, have a good rest of the month. It's coming up. And thank you to voices.com, Sean and Teresa and David yesterday. It's been a nice experience, very professional, all the good things, and a learning experience. And as I said, I learned that little trick about not having to do the whole audition.
Yeah.
So I can do 2 or 3 auditions in the time it might have taken me for 1. So we shall see.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Out there.
I appreciate your time, Michael. It was great to talk to you, and I look forward to hearing more from you.